Amazing encounter, homeless girl rescues injured biker surprising billionaire's life-changing gift. Emily's fingers trembled as she sifted through the unkempt mess of discarded boxes behind the market. The scent of rotting food clung to her, but her stomach churned more at the thought of facing another night without a proper meal. Sunlight dipped low, the hues of orange and pink splashing across the horizon, yet she couldn't afford to glance up at nature's beauty. Hope felt futile beneath the weight of her reality. 4 months on the streets had stripped it away, leaving only a gritty ambition to become a veterinarian. But the sound of a revving engine cut through her thoughts, sharp and foreboding. Suddenly, a screech echoed, followed by a terrible crash. Panic surged, and without thinking, Emily shot down the street. Her heart slammed in her chest as she rounded the corner and froze at the sight of a motorcyclist, Jake, sprawled on the asphalt, pain twisting his face. The driver was nowhere to be seen, just a crumpled bike and a scattering of onlookers. Emily's breath quickened as the cacophony of concerned voices hummed around her. She hesitated for a heartbeat. What could she do? She was just a girl, homeless and starving, one in a never-ending crowd of discounting gazes, but then she remembered the books from the library, pages filled with diagrams and techniques for animal care. Instinct kicked in. Step back. She called, her voice sharper than she felt. She knelt beside Jake, drawing on the knowledge she had, hands shaking but steadying into a purpose. She focused on his injuries, roughly assessing how to help, hoping he wouldn't notice the desperate resolve spiraling within her. Every moment spent over him felt like a tug-of-war in her mind. Her nerves screamed that no one would care about a girl like her, while a deeper voice dared her to rise above, to be someone. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Jake's breath came shallow, he looked up at her, determination igniting in his gaze. Hours vanished like smoke, as lights flashed from the approaching ambulance. She could hear the sirens now, sharp and demanding, unearthing her long-buried dreams. But was it too late for her? With each passing minute, a bitter truth gnawed at her: she would never be free from this life of uncertainty. What if this encounter meant nothing? What if she saved Jake only to remain stuck in her despair, a life lived in shadows? Days later, she learned through whispers of the hospital how Jake was recovering, a wealthy heir who had everything except, perhaps, the moral compass to navigate it. She couldn't help but feel shaken by the contrast between their worlds, a chasm deeper than the ocean. She wanted to believe that her story mattered, that the strength she clung to was more than just foolishness, yet with every breath, the suffocating weight of her circumstances loomed larger. As she resumed her scavenging tonight, more determined than ever to somehow attain her dreams of a life devoted to healing creatures like those she had often cared for, a cascade of fears surged. What if she couldn't bridge the gap between ambition and reality? What if the secrets of her past strangled any chance of success? A collision was coming, one that could shatter her once and for all. Would she ever find solace, or would the looming shadows claim her hope? Each step forward felt like a step deeper into the maze. The city lights flickered like distant stars, illuminating Emily's path as she navigated the alleys she had come to know all too well. The previous encounter with Jake had unsettled her, planting a seed of determination that now took root and spread through her veins. Her heart thrummed with a burgeoning resolve to claim her future, while shadows whispered doubts. Were the voices from her past a chorus of failures and loss gaining volume to drown out the ambition ignited by her brief moment of purpose? She recalled everything she had absorbed from those dog-eared veterinary books, the ones pulled from library shelves where dust danced like trapped sunlight. Suddenly, the prospect of pursuing her dreams seemed tangible, yet the reality of her circumstances weighed heavily on her. New resolve collided with her history of abandonment and neglect. As she continued scavenging, Emily stumbled upon a veterinary clinic tucked away between two larger buildings. The sign was faded, and the windows were grimy, yet curiosity compelled her steps forward. She could hear muffled barks and mews filtering through the walls, the life inside pulling at her heartstrings. Determined to push through the door, Emily found herself standing before a receptionist who barely glanced up from her screen. The sterile environment felt daunting, but familiarity sparked another wave of courage. "Excuse me," Emily said, her voice a fragile thing. "I've been reading about veterinary care. Are there any volunteer opportunities available here?" The receptionist turned, a sharp eyebrow raised. "We only take serious applicants. This is not a place for kids to play." The word stung, reverberating with every rejection she had faced. But the awareness that she needed to change her approach solidified within her. "I'm serious," she countered, bracing herself. "I can help. I may not have experience, but I'm willing to learn. I want to be a veterinarian one day." The receptionist's gaze softened slightly. "Fill out this form," she offered with reluctance, extending a clipboard with a pen. "And come back tomorrow if you're serious." Fingers trembling again, Emily took the form, sensing hope bloom amidst the relentless weeds of despair. She spent the night filling it out, heart racing at the thought of what could unfold if she could prove herself. Each word she penned felt like a promise to herself, and to the future she could grasp if only she had the chance. With the rising sun, Emily returned to the clinic. This time it was her resolve that stood taller than the city skyline. The receptionist barely looked up again as she approached, but the form was submitted, her first step into her dreams. Days turned into a blur as she settled into a routine of feeding animals, cleaning cages, and learning the basics of care from the busy staff. While the others hardly acknowledged her, every time Emily cared for a creature, she felt a shift within, as if pieces of her fractured self were beginning to stitch back together, yet there was still uncertainty. Her past hadn't receded, it lingered, shadowing her moments of triumph. What would happen if she faltered, if the fear of inadequacy held her back in the face of true challenges? As she began to observe the interactions of seasoned vets, each confident decision they made carved trained paths in her mind, yet the internal battle remained unyielding. One evening, just after closing, Emily overheard an argument in the back room. The familiar voice of a man surged through her thoughts. Jake. Her heart raced. What could he be doing here? Inadvertently, she felt the weight of possibility entwining with the dread of their worlds colliding once more. The moment stood pregnant with anticipation. Would this encounter shift the course of both their lives? As her pulse quickened, a shift in the air alerted her to the fact that her choices were once again about to confront the past, and whatever truth they unveiled could ripple through both of their futures. But was she ready to face it? Emily stood rooted to the spot, her heart pounding as Jake's voice continued to rise in the back room. The tension hung thick in the air, and she felt like a tightrope walker, balancing on the fragile edge of her past and the slippery slope of her aspirations. She had come to the clinic intending to distance herself from the ghosts of her history, to make something of herself, yet now the audio of an argument blasted her fragile resolve. Jake's words, sharp and laden with familiar bitterness, pierced through her focus. "You don't understand how hard this is. This isn't just some job for me." Hadn't she battled similar challenges? The feeling of inadequacy nagged at her. Did Jake regard her as just another nameless face, someone easily forgotten? Determination stirred within her. It mattered that she faced this moment. She inhaled deeply, grounding herself before moving further into the back area of the clinic. Just as she approached, the door swung open, and Jake emerged, his brow furrowed and his expression a mixture of frustration and vulnerability. He clashed against the sterile environment of the clinic, a storm against calm. At that moment, Emily knew she must confront the reality of their shared history, a history she had tried to leave behind. "Jake," she called, her voice steady but underlined with an urgency she couldn't mask. He turned, surprise flickering across his features. "Emily." The tension that had once filled him seemed to evaporate the moment their eyes locked. It intrigued her that despite everything, there was a flicker of acknowledgement, a reminder of connection that still pulsed between them. "What are you doing here?" he asked, almost hesitantly. His posture gradually relaxed, lulled perhaps by the familiarity of her presence. "I'm volunteering," she replied, the weight of her words spinning into a declaration of her newfound purpose. "I want to become a veterinarian, and I'm finally taking steps to make that happen." Jake seemed to steel himself with that admission, his eyes narrowing as if grappling with conflicting emotions. "That's actually great," he admitted, though there was an edge to his tone. Curiosity darted behind his irritation, as though he was assessing her worth rather than extending his usual indifference. "Why are you here?" she challenged, her determination unwavering. "Is it still about that dream of yours? Or has everything else failed?" He flinched, the wounded look flaring a flicker of remorse. "It's complicated. Not everything is as easy as it looks, Emily." In that moment, their shared past seemed almost palpable, the memories coiling around them like an old, familiar blanket, suffocating and protective in equal measure. Why did he struggle so? Did he believe he was unworthy, just like she often did? "I know what it's like to feel alone, Jake. I can't pretend my past doesn't haunt me," she confessed, her voice barely louder than a whisper. "But I'm turning it into something meaningful. You should too." A moment passed in deliberation. The confrontation felt electric, laden with the urgent need for emotional resolution. Could they both take pivotal steps toward reclaiming lives they yearned for, or would they remain prisoners of their histories, destined to drown in disappointment? The silence stretched, heavy and pregnant with possibilities. Emily sensed that whatever decision they both made next might irrevocably alter their futures. Maybe this was not just a chance encounter, but a turning point. If they could break free from their past, would they rise together or fall apart? The choice lingered in the thick air, a question poised between them, waiting like a tight spring for release. Would they collaborate to reshape their destinies, or would the ghosts of their choices build walls they couldn't leap beyond? The moment felt monumental, and Emily harbored the nagging conviction that only one path led to liberation: the willingness to confront what lay ahead, together or apart. Trapped in the middle of their tension, one thing was clear: the past was no longer the only player in this narrative. How would they choose to transform the threads of past failure into a tapestry of hope? The answer lay just beyond their grasp, tantalizingly close yet bound by their silent struggles. Jake's gaze shifted as he took a half-step back, burying his emotions beneath a practiced facade. The familiar ghosts of their history cascaded like static over the silence, but this time Emily refused to let fear dictate her response. She had stepped into this moment with determination, ready to peel back the layers of their shared past. She searched for clarity in his expression, hoping for the flicker of encouragement she had once longed for. "Is this truly about a job for you, Jake?" she pressed, resolute. His eyes narrowed again, almost defensive. "Are you really looking to reclaim a dream, or are you just stalling?" The question hung in the air, a weighty challenge, and Emily felt the temperature shift with the audacity of her words. For a moment, Jake stood frozen. Perhaps he hadn't anticipated this confrontation, and maybe he hadn't expected her to push back. Yet there she was, artfully treading the line between vulnerability and strength. Those intense moments of doubt she had once harbored began to dissipate, the air becoming lighter as her resolve crystallized. She wasn't here to dissolve into the background, she was here to rise above it. "I'm not stalling," Jake replied, though a hint of uncertainty crept into his tone. "It's hard to explain." He turned away, casting his gaze towards the wall, lost in thought. Emily took a step forward, a subtle act, but a step nonetheless. The act of moving closer felt like amplifying a chorus that had been muted for too long. "Maybe it's time to stop explaining and start doing," she countered, injecting urgency into their exchange. "Maybe we can push each other to find a way forward." She noticed a two-dimensional image of determination flicker in his eyes, but it quickly dimmed under the weight of his insecurities. Would he choose stagnation over potential? The thought gnawed at her as the silence returned. The contrast of his traditional ambition against her brave new direction made her pulse quicken. She saw herself reflected in his hesitation. They were both grappling, but she felt different now, ready to challenge their shared past with a clear vision of a forward path. "I can't let this place crumble, Emily," he finally said, a note of desperation creeping in. Everything is falling apart. With his admission, he dissected his own walls, revealing the vulnerability he had so carefully shielded. It was a window into his struggle, the despair she recognized all too well from her own journey of transformation. Yet, instead of running for cover as she once would have, she resolved to confront it head-on. She had carved a way to channel her heartbreak into resilience. Surely he could do the same. What if we don't have to do this alone? Emily suggested, hope igniting within her. What if we collaborate? Together, we could bolster each other's strengths while confronting our fears head-on. His brow furrowed as he absorbed her words. Uncertainty warred with an inkling of curiosity. Her heart raced, drumming in rhythm with newfound belief. They had been given this moment, a chance to step onto a path neither dared to tread alone. Just think about it, she urged as their eyes met again, grounding each other amidst the tremors of revelation. We can lean on each other instead of running from what's familiar. I've seen what we both can achieve, I refuse to let our past define us. Jake inhaled slowly, processing the offer she had laid before him. Their shared history couldn't be undone, but the potential for a shared future ignited a flicker of light in the dim corners of doubt. But what if we fail? He questioned, a lingering shadow slipping into his voice. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, she replied, feeling emboldened. But I would rather try and fail than remain stuck in these patterns. For the first time in a long while, she sensed the air start to shift around them, thick with the promise of change. Did Jake ever acknowledge the potency of their combined aspirations? Would he be willing to reclaim control over their futures? As silence enveloped them once more, she felt it building. The tidal wave of shared possibility. This moment held weight. Each of them stood on the precipice of potential and fear, all within the hospital walls that loomed as both sanctuary and prison. This wasn't just about their past, it was about stepping into their futures if only they could summon the strength. Emily's mind raced onward. The heat of determination coursed through her veins. Would he rise to the occasion, or would he retreat back to shadows that didn't illuminate their paths? The tension heightened, pregnant with unspoken ambitions and lingering doubts. Emily held her breath, both exhilarated and anxious. The pivotal showdown lay ahead, would they seek growth together or drift apart once and for all? The revelations that awaited them next could shift everything. Emily watched Jake closely, sensing the internal conflict flaring behind his tense demeanor. His brow furrowed, and his mouth twisted into a taut line as he grappled with the enormity of her proposition. She recognized disbelief in his eyes, but also hesitant intrigue. Was this the moment he needed to emerge from the cocoon of self-doubt he had wrapped around himself? What would it even look like? Us working together, he finally asked, softening slightly but still heavily anchored in skepticism. A surge of excitement washed over Emily. This was progress, a shift in energy rather than continuing their dance of avoidance. It could mean brainstorming ideas for revitalizing this place, restructuring how we operate, she suggested, her mind racing to picture a future where they transformed not just their careers, but their lives. I have a ton of ideas, and I know you have the operational skills to implement them. Together, we can make change happen. For the first time, she felt as if their roles could flip. No longer was she the one needing validation now, they could stand shoulder to shoulder as equal partners. Jake took a deep breath and paced a few steps away, glancing at the peeling paint on the walls that had once breathed life and color into their ambitions. It's too risky, he muttered. What if this place doesn't survive even then? What if we go through all this trouble and it collapses anyway? His retreat into defeatism stung, but Emily consumed her frustration. She remembered those trials had, in fact, fueled her own transformation. She could understand the fear of trying, but the fear of not trying loomed larger for her now. Rather than pressing harder, she paused, choosing her words with care. It is risky, she confirmed, her voice steady. But it's also vital. We need change, or we'll drown in this monotony. We have to face risks if we want to forge new paths. It's time to choose between fear and fulfillment. The tension simmered between them like a pot on the verge of boiling over. Emily could see the gears turning in his mind, torn between the security of inaction and the thrill of potential. Okay, he finally said, the word hanging like a fragile thread bridging the chasm of uncertainty that separated them. Let us say we try. How do we even start? The flicker of interest in his tone urged her upward, a light illuminating the corners of her anticipation. Let us start with a plan, she said, a determined smile breaking over her features. We gather feedback from the team and brainstorm ideas that have been shelved. There is so much untapped potential here. We can cultivate an innovative environment together. As she spoke, the momentum grew, the visions bubbling inside her igniting as her words flowed. Jake nodded, though his hesitance still clung to him. Sure, we can gather feedback. But will they even listen to us? They might think it's just another half-baked idea. They will listen if we lead with conviction, she asserted, sensing his need for reassurance. We can present this as a project rather than a last resort. Let them see the possibilities. You've always had credibility here, Jake. People believe in you. He stared at her, an internal battle waging beneath the surface. What if it all falls apart? What if we end up failing again? But what if we don't? She countered, leaning closer, her earnestness casting a glow in the dimness. The words hung in the air, resonating between them, a quiet determination forming like a pact. As Emily watched the flickering flicker of hope etch itself back into Jake's expression, anxiety slipped through her fingers. There would be no perfection in their journey, no guarantees, yet they stood at the brink of something transformative. The thought hit her, hadn't she spent a lifetime hidden behind her own fears? Jake was a mirror now, reflecting the potential road ahead. Both of them were intertwined in this aspect of their journey. Perhaps they were stronger together than apart. Yet as excitement built, another layer of anxiety seeped in. What if her vision was merely naive? What if they sought progress only to discover that their fears were justified? The elation was weighted by ambiguity, each risk wrapped in uncertainty. Let us meet this week, Jake decided, breaking her thoughts as he stepped back with a look that suggested he was finally ready to commit. I can talk to some people, see if they're open to a session. His willingness to step forward gave her the sense that she wasn't alone in this endeavor. A surge of gratitude intertwined with a growing sense of trepidation coursed through her. Yes, that works. Let us carve out a time where we can visualize everything. As they parted ways, Emily had the strange sensation of a storm gathering not far off, an exhilaration mingled with apprehension flowing together. The horizon of possibility stretched out before them, softening the boundaries of the past they had both wrestled with. But would the storm usher in the change they craved or lay waste to their efforts? Amidst the swirling excitement, her heart raced with the question, could they really reshape their futures together? The stakes felt monumental, each step closer revealing shadows hidden in the depths of challenge. With resolve fortifying her spirit, she stepped out, imbued with adrenaline. The upcoming meeting felt like a pivot point, but she couldn't shake the sense that unseen obstacles loomed just beyond their vision. A flicker of doubt whispered through her thoughts, ominous and urgent, reminding her of the fragile line they were balancing upon. The horizon glimmered, but could they mold their destinies, or would they end up lost in the echoes of their pasts? The dance of potential lay ahead, teetering between triumph and turmoil. Emily could hardly concentrate as the days blurred into one another. The meeting with Jake loomed, yet uncertainty gnawed at her. Each time she envisioned their new plan taking flight, a surge of hope crashed against the waves of doubt. She found herself staring at the cracked ceiling of her apartment, questioning not just their vision but her own capabilities as well. Would they be able to resonate with their colleagues? Some of them saw initiative as a breach of tradition rather than an opportunity for improvement. They had held on to their roles for years, and the thought of change might send them retreating back into their shells. As lunchtime approached, Emily grabbed her notebook filled with ideas, determined to shape a presentation that would articulate the value of their proposed overhaul persuasively. The following day came, filled with a mingling of anticipation and dread. Sitting across from Jake in a small conference room, she felt an electric charge in the air. He fiddled with his pen, eyes downcast, as if wrestling with the entire weight of their endeavor. She couldn't ignore the unmistakable signal of his anxiety. "Jake, we need to outline our core goals and decide how to present them to the team," she said, adopting a tone more commanding than usual. That he nodded, though it seemed more out of obligation than conviction. "Yeah, okay. But what if they don't respond? We could end up looking foolish." Emily's stomach twisted with frustration, her determination morphing into impatience. "We won't look foolish if we prepare. They'll listen if we present with clarity and confidence." Jake took a breath and finally looked her in the eyes. There was something raw in that gaze, a spark, perhaps. "All right then, let us hear your ideas. Can we make this feel less like a presentation and more like a dialogue with them?" The subtle shift in Jake's attitude fueled her own courage. She tapped her pen against her notebook, invigorated by the prospect of not just speaking, but truly engaging. "Absolutely. We need to encourage feedback and make them feel part of this transformation." As they laid out the framework for their presentation, the flow between them became seamless. Emily found herself smiling often, rekindled enthusiasm washing over her. They discussed ways to gauge the team's perspective while establishing a platform where everyone felt included and valued. Suddenly, an anticipated voice sliced through the fabric of their focused exchange. "So, you two are cooking up something?" It was Mark, a skeptical department veteran who saw change as a challenge to his authority. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed defiantly. Emily's heart raced, a surge of adrenaline rushing through her. Would he dismiss them outright, armed with sarcasm and skepticism? She took a steadying breath and steadied her gaze. "Actually, yes, we are. We're working on a proposal to improve our operations, and we love your insights." Mark stepped into the room, his brow twisted in skepticism. "Oh, so it's going to be one of those feel-good initiatives? Because if anyone thinks the team's going to rally behind another, let's make it better, cliché, they're in for a reality check." Jake's face paled, the shadows of doubt creeping back. Emily, driven by a fierce protective instinct for their fledgling plan, countered. "You'd be surprised, Mark. Everyone wants to feel valued. Together, we can explore methods that would not only improve our productivity but also foster better camaraderie around here." Mark scrutinized them, his expression unreadable. She felt his resistance like a stone wall thrust between them, tangibly heavy and limiting. Yet beneath the irritation, she sensed something else, a flicker of curiosity trying to break through his guarded exterior. Was he genuinely opposed, or merely posturing? "Look," he said, "if you really think people will engage with your dreams of grandeur, good luck with that. But I'm telling you now, don't take it personally if it goes south." Emily's resolve tightened. She had faced larger trials, and this would be no different. "We will take feedback seriously," she replied firmly, meeting his gaze without wavering. "We're not selling a dream, we're inviting solutions. Maybe you'll even reconsider your perspective after we present." As he turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of something, perhaps admiration or acknowledgement, snaking through his demeanor. Whether it was a flicker of respect or just a fleeting moment of sunlight, he walked away without further comment. Jake, slightly shaking, looked at Emily with new recognition. "That was really bold of you." Emboldened by Jake's approval, she felt a rush of vitality. Whether they succeeded or failed would depend on their ability to face those opposed to change. But beneath the surface, as they continued refining their approach, old fears and scars trickled through Emily's mind. Could she maintain this boldness when the real stakes were laid bare? As the clock ticked closer to the meeting, an unexpected dread began twisting in her gut. What if she wasn't enough? The door held so much potential for change. But as they prepped for it, the specter of their past failures loomed just out of sight, shadows lingering on the edges of her thoughts. Emily glanced at Jake, firing up the final points of their presentation. Would today be a beginning or a reinforcement of fear? The answers felt as haunting as the questions. The moment of truth approached, and yet doubt hung like a thick fog, threatening to collapse their aspirations under its weight. As they walked towards that uncertain meeting, with all eyes upon them, Emily struggled to silence the whisper that echoed through her mind: would they step into the light or retrace their steps back into the dark? The conference room was oppressive, a sterile landscape of faux oak and fluorescent lighting that amplified her growing anxiety. As they took their positions at the front, Emily felt the weight of every expectation looping around her neck. Yesterday's moment of boldness vanished into thin air, replaced by a tightening in her chest encased in chilly apprehension. Around the long table, familiar faces stared back, their expressions ranged from curious to speculative, as if she and Jake were pieces of an equation they were determined to solve. Mark sat toward the back, arms crossed tightly, his skepticism a palpable barrier that no pep talk could dismantle. She glanced at Jake, who offered a reassuring smile, although it wavered under the scrutiny of their colleagues. Taking a deep breath, Emily projected her voice, surprising herself with its steadiness. "Thank you for gathering today. We're here to share our vision for improving the way we work as a team. But more importantly, we want to hear from you." She could see eyes darting between her and Jake, the curriculum vitae of the department clashing violently with her optimistic approach. "We recognize there's wariness surrounding these discussions. Change is hard," she continued, "but the cost of inaction is higher than you might think." The room stirred slightly, a low murmur whispering down the table. The tension was akin to holding one's breath before plunging into icy waters. Her heart beat louder in her ears. Could she draw them out from the cold edge of complacency? Jake stepped up, his earlier nervousness washed away by the momentum she hoped to build. "We need your insights, experiences, and reservations as we map out what a more effective workflow could look like. This isn't just about a new plan, it's about us collectively reshaping our environment." Emily's pulse quickened as the atmosphere shifted. She had been aware of the wall Mark erected, but here, it cracked ever so slightly. "That's all well and good," he interjected, his tone biting yet tinged with curiosity. "But past initiatives haven't exactly been well received. What makes you think this will be different?" "Because we're not leading with assumptions," Emily responded, amplifying the resolve that barely clung onto her. "We want to engage in an ongoing dialogue. This is a journey where every voice counts, including yours, Mark. How can we enhance what's clearly not working? What would give you true motivation?" A beat of silence hollowed around them, the air thick with contemplation. Emily could feel Mark's internal struggle, as if a small crack was forming in the foundation of his skepticism. Would he open up or pull back beneath his protective shell? As different team members began to share their concerns, doubts poured out, mixing uneasily with the glimmers of hope expressed. Emily embraced their skepticism as opportunities, reframing their fears into challenges she and Jake could navigate together. Each shared perspective offered a chance to rebuild a fractured relationship between the team's past and its potential. With each exchange, Emily noticed a shift in herself as well. She was no longer just a participant in her own life but a vital contributor, actively creating space for dialogue and clarity. This was her time not only to be seen and heard, but to champion an agenda framed around collaboration and respect. But as the meeting continued unfolding, Emily became acutely aware that some colleagues remained entrenched in their skepticism. Mark, though marginally more engaged, still radiated mistrust. The adolescent fear of rejection began to creep back into her mind. Would they be able to shift the tide against so much institutional inertia? Then, in a moment of sheer determination, she decided to take a bold step further. "What if," she proposed slowly, "we commence by gathering anonymous feedback? That way, every person can express their thoughts freely without the pressure of recognition. What do you think?" Jake's eyes widened as he processed Emily's initiative, surprise mingling with pride. The concept hung in the air like the aroma of fresh coffee, one palpable enough to be savored but fleeting enough to vanish without action. The response was mixed, some murmured thoughtful agreement while others looked on skeptically. Mark studied her intently, like a judge weighing the gravity of her proposal. There was resistance lingering, yet something in Emily stirred anew, refusing to back down. She had faced moments like this before: the uncertainty, the anticipation, and she had to believe there was merit in what they were attempting to establish, whether or not everyone could embrace it right away. As the meeting stretched on, its potential felt more real than ever, yet the shadows of doubt still loom large. Would this be the infusion of progress they all desperately needed, or a precursory failure echoing their past? The truth hung within her mind. It was a matter of now steering a bold course into uncharted territory. Coming out of the meeting, despite the progress made, Emily felt a chill course through her veins. As she stepped back into the world beyond, she couldn't shake the mounting anxiety. All it would take was one piece of critical feedback or a single dismissive remark to unravel the fragile tapestry she had strived to weave. But what if, instead of retreating into doubt, she chose to confront those fears head-on? The question gnawed at her as they walked back to their desks, setting the stage for an even firmer resolution. What lay ahead within their reach once they dabbed their hands into the notion of authentic collaboration? Emily returned to her desk, the adrenaline from the meeting still coursing through her veins, fueling an internal dialogue that refused to quiet down. The tentative steps she had taken seemed monumental in her mind, yet the remnants of doubt clung to her like a stubborn shadow. How could so much be resting on the acceptance of a few scribbled ideas, a couple of promising suggestions? She flicked through emails, each notification a reminder of the tangible realities waiting for her: deadlines, project reviews, accountability measures looming like hawks. The feedback initiative weighed heavily on her thoughts. What if it didn't yield the insights she hoped for? What if her intention to foster transparency only opened the floodgates to negativity? "Hey, Em." Jake's voice broke through her cascade of self-doubt, lightening the atmosphere like a beam of sunshine cutting through a gray sky. He shuffled over, his posture open and vibrant. "You were great in there." The sincerity of his compliment momentarily disarmed her. "Thanks. I'm just trying to make sure they feel like they have a say." "Exactly." His eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "You challenged Mark directly. That's not something most people would dare to do." The worry etched onto Emily's brow softened under the warmth of his acknowledgement. "I'm trying. But I can't shake this feeling that one slip-up could undo everything." "Maybe that slip-up is part of the process," Jake suggested, his tone shifting from admiration to a more contemplative cadence. "Change isn't a straight line. It's messy and unpredictable. How we handle the setbacks is what defines us." Emily looked at Jake, parsing his words while envisioning potential responses from their colleagues. Would they embrace the constructive approach she proposed? Or would they let past disappointments dictate their reactions? "Let's start drafting a survey for that feedback," she said, determination threading into her voice. "We need to put something tangible in front of the team." For the rest of the afternoon, the atmosphere around their desks morphed into a workspace bustling with energy. Jake and Emily collaborated, filling a digital document with thought-provoking questions and prompts designed to draw out honest opinions. Each suggestion they crafted became an act of defiance against the inertia that held the department hostage. As they finalized the survey, Emily felt a flicker of empowerment ignite within her. The feedback form wasn't just a collection of inquiries, it represented a declaration of intent. This was her way to assert that change was imminent, that open communication was necessary, and that every opinion mattered. However, the fear occasionally resurfaced, echoing her earlier insecurities. What if they received more criticism than support? What if her own ideas were rejected? Navigating the emotional turmoil within herself became as intricate as drafting questions that encouraged the team's cooperation. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the office in a warm glow, Emily felt the weight of her responsibilities pull at her again. She snagged her bag and turned to Jake, who was preparing to leave. "Do you think we're really on the right path?" "Emily, I think you're leading a movement," he replied, his serious tone carrying an undercurrent of admiration. "But remember that movements don't come without their challenges. Expect some resistance." She let his assertion settle, swirling in her mind like a fresh thought that needed further exploration. The pragmatic side of her fueled her drive, yet the personal stakes pressurized her resolve. What if the pushback was precisely what she needed to sharpen her own vision? What if it forced her to redefine leadership on her terms? The night ahead lingered in front of her, a battleground of reflection awaiting her. She had a choice: confront her fears head-on or cower in hesitation. "Tomorrow, I'll prove it to myself," she whispered to the empty room, determination flooding her system. The events of their meeting had started a ripple, but it lay initiating the response that could either solidify her transformation or unveil a vulnerability that could be difficult to navigate. Just as she was about to close her laptop, a new thought emerged from the chaos. What if she enlisted more allies to join her cause? Maybe collaboration could extend beyond the confines of the conference room. That was the real query swirling within her. It was time not just to face the skepticism of Mark or others but to build a coalition robust enough to confront institutional inertia. As she locked up for the night, a wave of adrenaline coursed through her. Tomorrow promised confrontation but also opportunity, a duality that magnified her decision-making path forward. But was she ready to take the plunge into the depths of uncertainty, to confront a truth that was as unpredictable as it was liberating? The moment had arrived. It was all or nothing. As dawn crept through the windows the next morning, Emily sat at her desk, her fingers poised over the keyboard as she prepared to send the feedback survey to the team. The weight of anticipation hung in the air, a tangible tension dancing alongside the vacuum of silence in the office. She felt like a tightrope walker balancing precariously on the edge of something monumental. With each tick of the clock, memories of her meeting from yesterday replayed in her mind: the passion of her words, the glances exchanged with colleagues, and the implicit challenge she posed to Mark. They all felt like echoes reminding her of her choices, pushing her towards the unknown. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that uncertainty could lead to growth, and pressed send. Instantly, a pang of anxiety nipped at her resolve as she watched digital confirmations roll in. What had she just unleashed? Emily's mental checklist spiraled. How will they react? Will they engage or dismiss? Yet, amidst the turmoil, a flicker of hope ignited. She envisioned an environment where colleagues could express their true opinions, share transformative ideas, and dare to voice their frustrations. This could lead to genuine innovation if navigated well. As the hours slipped by, her inbox began to populate with responses. Some were supportive, while others dug deeper, questioning her intentions and past decisions. Emily skimmed through the messages, her heartbeat syncing with the rhythm of uncertainty and self-reflection. The constructive criticism stung, yet it was the voice of doubt disguised as feedback that truly unsettled her. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea, she muttered, her resolve wavering momentarily. To combat the creeping negativity, she recalled Jake's words about resilience through setbacks. It was a reminder she needed. Her path was rife with challenges, but growth didn't sprout without adversity. Emily swallowed harder, reminding herself that these responses were merely stepping stones in her journey, not the end point. Each suggestion, whether flattering or critical, was shaping her perspective and refining her leadership style. By mid-morning, Mark strolled by her desk, his expression cryptic. "So, you're really opening the floodgates, huh?" he said, his voice casual, yet tinged with an edge. Packing herself with courage, Emily met his gaze. "Yes, I believe it's crucial for us to hear everyone's voice. Transparency leads to better teamwork." Unsurprisingly, he chuckled, a dismissive sound that reverberated in her ears. "You'll quickly learn that some voices don't add to harmony, Emily. Just don't drown in the noise." His words echoed in her mind long after he left, a challenge wrapped in a warning. For the first time, she fully grasped her pivotal role not just as a leader but as a changemaker. She needed to navigate those turbulent waters, not letting undue criticism derail her mission. It was essential to turn backlash into a dialogue rather than a monologue. That day shaped something within her, a realization of her power not just to lead but to connect. She took lunch at her desk, scouring through each response meticulously. A plan formed in her mind, not just to defend her initiatives but to swell the collective ambitions of her team. What if she turned the criticism into collaborative sessions? She began drafting a blueprint for a follow-up meeting. As evening approached, she sent out invitations for a brainstorming session designed not just to address concerns but to encourage ideas and solutions from the ground up. The emotional turbulence inside her settled into a steely resolve. She could foster both challenge and unity. This was her stage. She would determine the narrative. However, just as she felt victorious, a new email arrived. Mark had responded with a pointed comment that sent trepidation pooling in her stomach. I hope you're ready for what is coming. Not everyone will welcome change. As she closed her laptop, the vibrant pulse of adrenaline surged once more. She was on the brink of igniting something new, but she was also aware of the looming shadows of skepticism. Was she prepared for the pushback? The moment to confront those who resisted her vision was almost upon her. Yet deep within, as she stood on the precipice of this challenge, she felt invigorated with purpose. Tomorrow would not just be about calls for feedback but about crafting her identity as a leader. The journey ahead was poised for conflict, but it also represented the chance to discover the untapped potential of her team and herself. Could she handle the storm brewing on the horizon? The thought loomed, drafting an edge of tension as she braced for the confrontation ahead. Emily stood at the threshold of the clinic one last time, heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The pivotal meeting was moments away, and everything she longed for, a transformation of herself, her relationship with Jake, and the dynamics of their clinic, hung on the precipice of this moment. The last few weeks had carved a path of growth she had never anticipated. Surrounded by colleague skepticism and unwarranted fears, she had learned to navigate feedback, embrace vulnerability, and insist on the value of open dialogue. More importantly, she had discovered her own voice, one that no longer trembled in the face of authority but resonated with clarity and intention. As she stepped into the meeting room, the energy shifted. Jake stood beside her, a silent ally whose presence bolstered her resolve. Around the table sat their colleagues, expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. Every face reflected echoes of doubt, yet she resolved to transform that energy into a catalyst for collaboration. Thank you all for gathering today, Emily began, voice steady, recalling Jake's reassuring words about the promise of change. Today isn't just about feedback, it's about creating a foundation where every voice counts. She felt a surge of strength as she glanced at Jake, who nodded in silent support. The atmosphere crackled with tension as discussions ignited. She guided the flow, inviting colleagues to voice their concerns and accept the chance to influence the clinic's future. Each contribution wove a tapestry that shuffled fear aside, revealing shared aspirations. Mark's skepticism lingered in the air, yet for the first time, Emily did not yield to his pressure. Instead, she lured him into the conversation, deftly weaving his thoughts into the broader dialogue. Mark, you're right that change is met with resistance, she reasoned, but that resistance often reveals the paths worth taking. He shot her an assessing glare, surprised by her stance, yet she could see a flicker of curiosity begin to forge through his defenses. As discussion unfolded, ideas thrived. Today, she wasn't just reclaiming her dreams, she was redefining what it meant to be a leader and architect of possibilities within this clinical environment. The exchanges sparked inspiration, and for each hesitation she faced, she countered with affirmations of purpose, evidence of past successes, and the shared joy of collective input. After an hour of back-and-forth dialogue, Emily felt an electric shift woven from unity and collaboration. Mark leaned forward, voice more open than hostile. I still have reservations, but it could be worthwhile to explore this path together. The sentiment echoed with the rest of the team, nodding and murmuring agreement until it crescendoed into a solid consensus. Together, they crafted a plan, a collective endeavor that emphasized shared responsibility while also allowing individuality to flourish. By the end of the meeting, as colleagues filed out, Jake approached her, eyes alight with recognition. You were amazing. You made them feel seen, he said, gratitude underscoring his words. The enormity of their success crashed over her, weaving a tapestry of fulfillment that stitched together the hopes she had fought for since the beginning of her journey. She had stepped into leadership, not just with authority, but with empathy and connection, a potent combination that changed the landscape of their clinic and her very self. In the weeks that followed, the clinic transformed, and so did Emily. Each day, she walked in with a sense of purpose, knowing she belonged to a shared mission. Criticism evolved into constructive discussions, lethargy into newfound motivation. The collaboration she had long sought had become a reality. Confidence enveloped her like a warm blanket, recognized as both a contributor and a changemaker amongst her peers. Jake, now a true partner in her vision, moved forward with renewed determination, solidifying their shared goal of elevating the practice together. As she reflected, Emily realized how far she'd come. No longer haunted by doubts but propelled by faith in herself and the voices of those around her, she had risen above the confines of her past. Her resolve solidified, she emerged not just as she had envisioned a veterinarian but as a leader who would continually cultivate growth in herself and in others. This chapter of her life had closed, but she understood that others would follow. She stood now ready for them, empowered by the belief that each step forward had threaded her destiny with purpose. Emily's achievements unfurled harmoniously, transcending barriers she once deemed insurmountable. The echoes of her once fractured self had morphed into a symphony of strength, a fitting testament of her metamorphosis. Now, it is your turn. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. What do you think Emily's next steps will be? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. This is the moment to show your support for the stories of personal transformation that drive us forward.